Okay. So welcome everyone. Like I said, my name is Alex Westby. I'm one of the housing services coordinators here at UCSB within University and Community Housing Services. This is the Housing 101 program, so we're going to go over quite a bit of information, both on the university side as well as the community housing services side, because we know that there can be a lot of anxiety and stress around this, and we just want to always show how we can be a resource for you all. So kicking right off, so the services that we provide are first the university side of things. So that is the housing and contracts and assignment services for the residence halls, for the university-owned apartments, graduate student housing, as well as family student housing. And that's a link to our website there. Underneath that, you can see some of our community housing services. So we do maintain a rental listing website, both for some of the local landlords, as well as a service for your students to sort of find different listings in the area. We also serve as a mediator for both roommate conflicts and landlord-tenant disputes, whether that is just offering our support individually, or getting you connected to some of the resources within the community. And you can also receive one-on-one assistance from our staff for your housing needs, basically covering the area's property providers, what listings are available. We also do educational programs such as this one. We have some forms and brochures, and we have the success guide there. This is going to be made available after this session, but I would definitely recommend checking out our student success guide. It has a lot of great information. So, for the university housing side of things, the continuing housing application process is going to be found at the link provided there. Starting January 20th, going to January 26th, our priority student housing process is going to open. So, students who apply during this time are applying during our priority housing window. And each of these different boxes that you see, the continuing students res halls, continuing students undergrad apartments, and continuing student graduate are all going to link to the respective applications. For context, in terms of how many students we house around 20% of the continuing student population, which can sound low, but only about 40% really apply to live with us in their continuing years. For that 20%, all students have to apply on time to be considered for a continuing student contract. And for reference, we had around 5,100 applications last year for both the residence halls and the apartments. And we were able to offer just over half of the students that applied, based on the projections that we had for new first year students and new transfer students. How contracts are assigned. So once you've applied during that priority application period, that creates an active application for us. Depending on our space available and those estimated numbers with admissions, is how we determine how many contracts we send out. And because we often have more applications than we do spaces that we're able to offer, we run a weighted lottery for spaces. And students receive a notification of if they receive a contract offer to their UCSB emails. The dates for the 20th to 26th is when the application is going to be open. We expect to be offering contracts that following Friday. So we do turn that around pretty quick because we want students to know whether or not they received a housing contract with us. If they don't receive a contract offer, which again, you're going to be notified of, it's important to seek community housing. And the reason we do it so early on in the year is we know that students want to secure and have that housing as soon as they can. If they are offered a contract and they accept for the actual space they receive, we do a retention process as well as a self-selection process. Retaining the process or retaining their space is just keeping their same space, their same bed space for the following year, and the self-selection is selecting among the available spaces after retention for the year following. For those that don't get contracts, we do keep those applications live. We will follow up with those students who aren't able to receive contracts during that first batch, and we essentially ask, hey, are you still searching for housing? We hope that students have found housing at that point, but in order to keep those applications active, we do send out additional updates where we ask students if they are still searching, so that we know whether or not to keep an application active, so we can get a better sense of how many spaces we have and how many contracts we can offer. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that we end up with more capacity to accommodate additional continuing students, but that information really isn't available to us until around the June, July timeframe, pretty late into summer, which is why we do encourage students who are not offered a contract through our process to explore community housing options. Once students have received contracts, this is the self-selection process. So towards the end of mid-May and early June, students receive their time to select their space. First, students are offered the opportunity to retain their space if they'd like, but if they don't want to retain their exact bed space, then they get their self-selection time where they can select from the other available spaces. If your students choose to do a roommate group, this is for students who also have contracts. So if all members hold contracts, they can create a roommate group, and whoever has the earliest self-assignment time would be able to bring everyone into whatever space they select. This is only available during the self-assignment period, not during the retention period, because the retention period is just keeping their own individual space versus the self-assignment time is when we're able to move more accommodating for those roommate groups. It's like selecting seats at a concert. It is first come, first serve. It is the spaces that we have are those that are available. Students will be able to select from any building, any floor, any room per their contract type. So whether that's residence halls or apartments. And then a little bit of a preview of what that self-selection process looks like. If a space is red, it's already occupied, and you can see the responses that the previous selecting student or the student in that space, what they answered on their application. If it's green, it's currently open. There's no additional information about those people. One of the questions we get a lot is, are sophomores eligible to live in the university apartments? And they are only available to third and fourth year students during the academic year, unless by special exception. We go based off of their year or years attending UCSB, not based on academic credits. And so we get a lot of students who reach out and ask, hey, I'm in junior standing. Am I eligible for the apartments? And unfortunately, because we go off of that year, sophomores are only eligible for the residence halls. Touring the residence halls and apartments, we currently do not have any tours that are available to actually be able to go to a physical building, walk through and see a space. However, we do have virtual tours that are available where essentially you can see a layout of an exact room. You can click around and walk through, see the different bedrooms. If it's the apartments, you can see the shared common areas. And then we have family student housing. So family student housing is available to full-time registered students who have families. Contracts are allocated through a waitlist process, and our current waitlist is around 12 to 24 months for families without children and 6 to 12 months for families with children. Priority is given to families with children, but prospective students who are looking towards family student housing do not need to be enrolled at UCSB before submitting an application to the waitlist, because we recognize that housing may be dependent for someone to actually come. All right. So that's most of the university information. I'm going to shift into our community housing side. So we do, again, a variety of community housing services. So we have a rental listing database where essentially we outreach to all of the smaller mom and pop landlords in the community and allow them to post listings. It's a little bit more secure. We have very constant communication with those landlords just to avoid any scams, because we know that there are some scams in the community, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We have a move in and move out presentation that covers some things to do in order to secure your security deposit. We cover rights and responsibilities because we recognize that some of the legal documents for leases can be relatively intimidating if you're not as familiar. And again, we do educational programs like this and some of the mediating I was talking about earlier. You can see on this slide, our rental listing database is available through that website. Students are able to access it with their SSO sign-on through the UCSB net ID and password, and then they can see all of the available properties that we have posted there. So when we start talking about community housing, this is a really great time. And one of the reasons we do this program at this time is because we want to encourage students and their families, their support networks, to be talking about a budget, talking about who they plan to live with. And if you don't have a group that you're planning to live with, knowing that you may want to look more towards buy bed space options. And then some of the things to be prepared and set yourself up well is being prepared to apply, getting approved, read over the lease, ask questions that you may have regarding the lease, signing and paying the security deposit. Things to keep in mind are the move in and move out dates on the lease. If your move out date is during graduation weekend and you are a continuing student and you expect to graduate at the end of that lease, making sure that you are proactively asking for an extension. Similarly, if you are going to have the space or the lease over the summer, but you plan to sublease or you would like to sublease, making sure to read your lease terms because not every lease allows for subleasing. Um, and then again, checking with the company, communicating with those property providers. So just to highlight some of the similarities and differences, because we are talking about the UCSB owned housing, the UCSB contracts versus community housing, which is largely private property management companies. So UCSB academic year contracts are for the academic year versus the 12-month contracts that many of the contracts are in the community. UCSB includes all utilities, so there is not a separate utility bill, whereas community tenants may have to pay for different utilities depending on what the property provider provides. We also have no security deposit. Community options will likely have security deposits. And one of the things we really want to highlight and why we highlight this is that both of these are still legal contracts. And so we want to encourage students and families to know what they are signing or what they're committing to before signing. We've had a lot of circumstances this past year where people have signed multiple contracts, ended up legally responsible for both of them. And we want to just encourage to, don't sign a contract unless you absolutely intend to stay there. Don't sign a contract as sort of a backup option, and just don't sign on to two contracts at one time. If you're looking to exit a contract, make sure you have everything squared away with exiting that contract, all of the fees associated, any replacements you may need before looking into that. So Facebook groups are a really great place for two things. One is just for finding different roommate options. Social media in general is where we hear from most of our students that they are finding different groups of people that they'd like to live with. Additionally, it can be a place to find different rental listings, but we do really encourage a sense of caution because there are scams out there. Because there is such a var variety of options for our housing market. There's a lot of information out there. You could go on right now and you could pull rental listing information, pictures of interior, things like that. And so we just caution you to be very thorough in your review. And if you ever have a listing that you're concerned about, you're not certain if it's legitimate, you're always welcome to email that to us, and we're happy to take a look at it. We do have some points of contact with a lot of the property providers, and so we're always happy to service that medium as well. This scam alert video is linked, and so for if you're looking at these slides, I definitely recommend. It's a quick minute and a half video that just covers some, red flags that you may want to keep an eye out for. Reviewing your lease. So we are always happy to go over a lease with students. We recommend reading through the lease as much as you can before coming to us. Generally speaking, some of the leases in the community for our property providers can get up to around 100 pages. It is rather lengthy, and so we do recommend sort of reviewing your lease first, preparing any questions that you might have specifically of, hey, what does this mean? I'm not sure about the language here. Anything that you can come up with, and we're happy to still sit with you, review it with you, answer any questions that we can sort of just clarify on, and then route you back and connect you with those property providers if you have any additional questions. So move in and move out videotaping. Because you are often in the community looking into having a security deposit for the first time, we strongly recommend moving forward with recording a move in and move out video, making sure that it's time stamped because it can very much help you in terms of pre-existing conditions of the apartment. And this is a how-to video on how to make your video for move in and move out, things to highlight, places to check, appliances to look at, things like that, just to ensure that you get that full sum of your security deposit back, because it can be intimidating and those security deposits are expensive. I'm going to pause on this slide for a moment. If you want to scan the QR code, I would highly recommend it. So this is the housing guide. This is the housing handbook with the Pardal Center, the Rapid Rehousing Basic Needs Program. So this was a collaborative and comprehensive guide that those organizations put together with us. This is an excellent resource. It talks about a lot of the different things that you should consider, more so even than what I've shared today so far. But things to note when you're looking out into housing, things like, do you have a mode of transportation? Are you someone who wants to cook a lot? How many people do you want to live with? Are you looking for a single bedroom? Are you looking for a double bedroom? What's going to best support you? And just all of those sort of prompting questions for you to consider to really know what your best option is when you start looking into the community. The other thing it does is it also highlights some of those more information about what you can do when you're looking in the community. And if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so just things to look out for when sifting through all of the many, many websites and information that is out there. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and take another brief moment if you want to scan that. It's a separate document entirely, so you can bookmark that. Definitely would recommend keeping that around. Some other resources that we always plug. So if you're looking into the community housing side of things, again, these leases can be very lengthy, and they often do require real legal expertise in the event that you end up in any sort of legal dispute. And so the Associated Students of UCSB has a legal resource center available via phone right there. They are located in the Pardal Center in Isla Vista. So there is a brick and mortar location you can go to if you ever need any support. The community service district is all about just supporting Isla Vista on whole. They also have housing mediative services, and they're located within Isla Vista, and so they may feel more supportive. And then the tenants union can also be a great resource in the event that you run into anything regarding tenants' rights, anything and everything. But yeah, just want to plug those. We also just, again, highlighting different resources. We have basic needs resources that are covered at UCSB. These are food security and basic needs advising centers, the Associated Students Food Bank and Pantry, We have different food, nutrition, and basic skills workshops because if you do end up moving off campus, you can always sign up for an off-campus meal plan. But if you do want to look more into cooking more frequently, the financial crisis response team, if for any reason you find yourself in a very, very heavy financial crisis, they are a great resource. And then the CalFresh program, which can provide monthly benefits for students who receive fresh and nutritious food. So, when you're looking at those community housing options, we want to also make sure that they are as accessible to you as possible. And so, we have four different housing fairs that we are currently planned for the winter quarter. So, our first is going to be on January 14th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Stork Plaza. The next is February 5th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Stork Plaza. This should be right around the same time that our contracts and our processes have resolved. So this may be more well attended because students would know what their resolution is. The following week from 5 to 7 in Corwin Pavilion, just offering it at a different time, pending people's schedules, and then another in March 3rd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And these are just rental fairs where we invite all of those property providers out to talk about what their leasing processes look like, what their rent looks like, what application fees, if any, exist, anything and everything. So I would definitely recommend coming by one of those. And these are not the only community resources that we have. These are really the best place to have them in front of you. But if you ever need, again, the community resource support, our office is still available. And if you're looking to get a hold of us, this phone number is our main office line. We are on that line from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4:30 daily. But we also have this housing info email if you have any and all questions about any of the information I've covered. And then our physical location is on the third floor of the University Center in room 3151. And that is, I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up. This is actually, there's another slide that says UCSB, but I'm just going to leave this up as I start to look into some of the questions. Just make sure I can answer anything. Um, okay.